Trends, trend lines, and channels. So basically, an uptrend, bullish trend, is when the price makes higher highs and higher lows. We can see it here. Higher high, higher than this one, and higher low, the low is higher than this one. A downtrend, which is also called a bullish trend, is when it makes the exact opposite. So that's a bearish trend. It starts from here. You can see a lower low, then a lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, right? So that's a trend. Now, you need to spot trend lines. So trend lines is basically a line, to make it simple. I've got an image. So yeah, that's a bullish trend line. So you can see every time the price went to it in a bullish trend, it bounced. And that's a bearish trend line. So you need to see it as simply, as I was saying, support and resistance is really important. Well, because basically like the trend line is the exact same idea. It's a trend, it's a support and resistance level, but just put on the side because the market is trending. So you wouldn't put them like always like that. So it's as simple as that. Just take support and resistance, put it that way. So you will use that line here. So now the tricky bit is to draw them. So because you can see we can start our trend lines from many different points. So of course, like a support and resistance, it's not really accurate. So like here, we could see the price, the wick, past the trend line. Well, it's still valid, of course. Still valid. So to draw them, basically, we need the trend line to have 3 touches minimum to be valid, first of all. So many people I see been drawing trend lines with only 2 touches, and that definitely doesn't work because it's not validated. So here we've got 3 touches. So how do we know that, like, if we take this one, see, 1, 2, then there's no touch. So you basically tweak the trend line in order to have the more touches you can, while keeping all the bodies. All right. So we can see here the wick is outside. That's okay. The wick is outside. That's okay. Touch again. So now we've got really nice touches on our trend line. And that's what you're basically trying to get. It's all these little touches. So that's the bullish trend line and the bearish trend line. We've got one here. It's a better example actually because you can see how to draw them properly. All right. So I'm on the weekly time frame here because the daily was a bit short. So you can see I started here and I could have took there. However, if I take this didn't touch the resistance, neither did this, and they was all just choppy. However, if I look closely and think, all right, if I take this one into account, well, this is a touch, this is still a touch. The wick went past it, but that's all right. There's a touch here, and then there was 2 touches here as well. And then it was choppy market, went back to it as support, and went back up, right? So basically, yeah, just train yourself to draw trend lines properly. And so what you need to know, and basically that will be the whole technical thing, is that trend lines, you can basically draw them many different ways. And as supports and resistance, like here, you could think, oh, well, I can see this. And yeah, it's been 1 touch, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's a support, right? So there's a trend line here, a trend line here. And then later in the videos, we'll see that all these forms patterns. So that's called a falling wedge. But yeah, so trend lines, really important to know how to draw them. Now, channels. Basically, a channel is when you've drawn your trend lines, you'll see that markets often have a bottom and a top. So we can see here, that's the bottom, that's the top, all right? It's going between them. In the trend, it's many times the same. So what I mean by that is if you take this one and on your keyboard you click on control, so you click control, you take the line and pull it, you'll see it will actually copy the line. So when you copy the line, you can put it to the resistance, and what we can see is that the trend has been going between the support and the resistance. So this is called a channel because it's the price is confined into a channel. And we basically get many of them. So let's try and find other ones. We probably had one little one here as well. Right. So that was a smaller trend line. Quickly, that was sort of a channel as well. And we can see there's basically a trend line inside another trend line. Well, that's a channel inside a trend line. So you can draw trend lines in all different ways. And what you'll actually see is that just like support and resistance, a trend line the price either bounces from a trend line or breaks a trend line. All right. So, however, if we look at this one, we could see, so you've drawn your trend line, very good. And inside this, what we could call channel, even though it hasn't got many touches at the upside, so you wouldn't like really short it, because also one thing you need to know is that a famous saying is that the trend is your friend. So if there's a trend, uptrend, try and buy. If there's a downtrend, try and be in the selling side, because you know long term the price is going up. So it's quite difficult to try and always sell this when it's going back down, because you can see if you've bought, movements are much bigger. So yeah, good thing to remember. But like here, for example, we had a smaller trend line, was approximately like that. It was quite a tricky one actually. Just drawing it fast for you, but all right. So, and we can see we've got smaller trend lines in into the big trend line. And a nice one here as well. Got one there. We've got we've got a few. So yeah, so that's trend lines, channels, and also remember that. So the more touches trend line has, the more power it has. Just like support and resistance, it's the same. And also that the steeper the trend line. So for instance, let's look at it like that. If the price has been going like this, right? So that's a really bullish trend, and you can draw a trend line like that. Well, this one will be quite weak because the steeper the trend line you draw, the less reliable it's going to be, and the more likely it will actually break, maybe even to do this and continue. And the flatter, basically, the trend lines, the more power it will have because it's more sustainable. Now, what I don't want you to do is, we'll see it, need an example, because many people draw trend lines just in order to prove they are right in trading this. Okay, so I found an example of what I was saying. It's basically, do not ever draw trend lines by forcing them to fit the market. So if they don't fit right, then the trend line is not valid. That's it. Don't try to make it valid just by tweaking it. So like an example of this would be, so that was the nice trend line. 1, 2, 3, 4 touches. All right. But some people would do, imagine now, let's put replay. Imagine the price was here. Some people would think, all right, well, the trend line is more something like this because they want to trade quickly. So they think, well, there was touches here. Maybe that was just a test, really. There was support here, so it's going to come here as well. But we'll see. It's basically they're forcing it. So they're buying here, but no, of course not. Why not? Because the trend line was not here at all. It was here. So never force a trend line in order to make a trade valid.